The introduction, the architecture of infinite recall. The human brain is the most sophisticated storage device in the known universe, yet most of us use it like a leaking bucket. We read, we watch, we listen, and within 48 hours, 80% of that information is gone, evaporated into the void of the forgotten. This is not a failure of intelligence, it is a failure of architecture. Most people are not bad at remembering, they are simply good at storing information in the wrong way. Welcome back to Fluent Minds. In this definitive masterclass, we are moving beyond the frustration of lost knowledge to the absolute mastery of permanent retention. We will show you how to transform your mind from a fragile temporary workspace into a massive permanent library of high-value knowledge. We are here to re-engineer the very way your neurons communicate. Our roadmap is built on the rigorous, world-class insights of 4 definitive works that have redefined the neurobiology of the human mind. First, Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer. The Hidden Secrets of Memory Athletes and the Ancient Art of Visualization. Second, How We Learn by Benedict Carey. The Biological Mechanics of Memory Consolidation and the Power of the Subconscious. Third, Remember by Lisa Genova. A deep dive into the neurobiology of why we forget and the mechanics of how we retrieve. And fourth, Make It Stick by Peter Brown and others. The ultimate, evidence-based science of effective long-term learning. Together, these authors prove that a photographic memory is not a mystical gift you are born with. It is a biological system you build one neuron at a time. Volume 1. The Illusion of Fluency and the Neurobiology of Desirable Difficulty. The greatest enemy of memory is a sophisticated psychological trap called the illusion of fluency. According to the groundbreaking research in Make It Stick, most people spend their lives studying in a way that feels productive, but is actually biologically useless. When you reread a chapter, highlight colorful sentences, or glance over your notes, you experience a sense of ease. You feel like you are learning because the information looks familiar to your eyes. But familiarity is the silent killer of retention. Your brain is simply recognizing a pattern it has seen before. It is not encoding the data into your long-term storage. To remember everything, you must abandon the comfort of ease and embrace the science of desirable difficulty. Memory is not the residue of reading, memory is the residue of thought. The harder your brain has to work to retrieve a piece of information, the more permanent that information becomes in your neural network. This is the biological power of active recall. Instead of looking at the page, you must close the book, look away, and force your brain to reconstruct the information from absolute scratch. This internal struggle triggers a massive signal to the hippocampus, the brain's central air traffic controller for memory. It tells your brain, this specific data is difficult to find, but vital for survival. Build a stronger bridge to it. By forcing the retrieval, you are physically thickening the myelin sheath around your neural pathways, making the signal faster and the memory more durable. Furthermore, you must understand the generation effect. When you try to answer a question before being given the answer, even if you fail, you create a fertile soil in your brain for the correct information to take root. You are not just a passive vessel to be filled, you must be an active hunter of information. If the learning process feels easy, you are likely wasting your time. True, permanent memory requires the friction of effort. It requires you to lean into the difficulty, knowing that the pain of recall is the exact moment the memory becomes immortal. Volume 2. The Spacing Effect and the Biology of Strategic Forgetting. To build a memory that lasts a lifetime, you must stop treating your brain like a suitcase that you can simply stuff with facts. Instead, you must treat it like a biological muscle that requires recovery to grow. This is the core principle behind the spacing effect, a phenomenon explored with surgical precision in how we learn. Most people are addicted to cramming, the act of spending 10 hours in a single day trying to master a subject. While this may work for a test tomorrow, it is a catastrophic strategy for long-term retention. In the world of neurobiology, cramming is like building a skyscraper on wet sand. The moment the pressure is removed, the entire structure vanishes. The science of the spacing effect proves that forgetting is actually a requirement for remembering. By spreading your learning sessions over days, weeks, and months, a process known as spaced repetition, you are hacking the biological process of consolidation. When you walk away from your desk and wait for a period of time, your brain does not stop working. It begins the invisible labor of moving information from the fragile temporary storage of the hippocampus to the massive permanent hard drive of the neocortex. The magic happens in the retrieval gap. By the time you revisit the material a few days later, you have naturally started to forget it. Your brain now has to work harder to find that information again. This specific struggle is what signals to the brain that the data is not just background noise, but essential knowledge. Each time you almost forget and then successfully retrieve, you are adding a new layer of neural cement to that memory. Furthermore, we must confront the Leitner system of priority. Not all information is created equal. The high IQ learner spends more time on the facts they find difficult and less time on the facts they already know. You are not just repeating, you are calibrating. By strategically timing your reviews to occur just before the point of complete forgetting, you are maximizing the biological efficiency of your neurons. You are not working harder, you are working in harmony with the natural rhythms of human cognition. To remember everything is to master the clock. It is to realize that rest is not the absence of learning, but the very period where learning becomes permanent. Volume 3. The Memory Palace and the Evolutionary Hardware of Spatial Recall. In the third volume of our journey, we must confront a startling biological reality. Your brain was never evolved to remember words on a page, abstract numbers, or dry facts. Evolutionary history has spent millions of years fine-tuning your brain for two specific things: space and survival. In Moonwalking with Einstein, Joshua Foer reveals that the greatest memory masters in the world do not have better brains, they simply have smarter techniques. They have learned how to hijack the hippocampus, the same area of the brain used for spatial navigation, to store intellectual data. This is the foundation of the method of loci, or the memory palace. The technique involves taking a physical environment that you know with absolute intimacy, such as your childhood home or your daily route to work, and transforming it into a mental filing cabinet. You take the abstract information you want to remember and convert it into a vivid mental image. But here is the secret. The image must be bizarre, exaggerated, or even scandalous. The neurobiology of this is profound. As Lisa Genova explains in Remember, the brain possesses a high-pass filter. It automatically discards the mundane and the ordinary. If you visualize a simple loaf of bread on your kitchen table, you will forget it. But if you visualize a 6-foot-tall loaf of bread, wearing a tuxedo and dancing a tango on your table, your amygdala and hippocampus will fire in unison. The brain marks this as a high-priority event. By placing these extraordinary images in specific loci or locations within your mental palace, you are creating a stable, spatial anchor for the information. When you need to retrieve the data, you don't search your memory, you simply take a mental walk through your palace. Your brain naturally sees the images where you left them. Furthermore, this technique utilizes multisensory encoding. To make a memory truly permanent, you shouldn't just see the image. You should smell the phantom scent of the bread, hear the music of the tango, and feel the texture of the tuxedo. The more regions of the brain you involve in the encoding process, the visual cortex, the auditory cortex, and the somatosensory cortex, the more robust the neural web becomes. You are no longer just memorizing a fact, you are living a mental experience. To remember everything is to stop being a librarian of text and to start being a cinematographer of the mind. Volume 4. The Context of Encoding and the Science of Environmental Variation. Most people have been conditioned to believe that they need a sacred, quiet, and unchanging space to study effectively. They seek the same desk, the same chair, and the same silence every day. But according to the groundbreaking research in how we learn, this is a strategic error that creates brittle memory. When you learn information in only one specific context, your brain bundles the knowledge with the surrounding environment. The smell of the room, the lighting, and even the hum of the air conditioner. This is known as context-dependent learning. If you are not in that exact environment during the moment of retrieval, your brain struggles to find the data. The information is there, but the environmental trigger is missing. To achieve elite universal recall, you must master environmental variation. Benedict Carey shows that by simply changing the room where you study, or even changing the background music, you are forcing your brain to decontextualize the information. Each time you switch environments, your brain is forced to re-encode the data in a new neural landscape. This process strips away the unnecessary environmental noise and leaves only the pure abstract core of the knowledge. You are essentially building multiple independent access points to the same memory. If you learn a concept in a library, then review it in a park, and then discuss it in a noisy cafe, you are creating a neural lattice so robust that it can be accessed anywhere, even under the high pressure of an exam or a boardroom presentation. Furthermore, we must address internal context. Your biological state, your mood, your level of caffeine, and even your hunger acts as a context for your memory. The high IQ individual understands state-dependent retrieval. If you learn something while you are calm and caffeinated, you will remember it best when you are in that same state. However, the ultimate master of memory practices self-testing across different internal states. By practicing retrieval when you are tired, when you are stressed, or when you are energized, you are stress testing your neural pathways. You are proving to your brain that this information is state-independent. To remember everything is to stop being a slave to your surroundings and to start being a master of the universal recall. You don't need the perfect room. You need a brain that has been trained to find the truth in the middle of any storm. Volume 5. The Retrieval Gap and the Neurobiology of Testing as a Learning Tool. In the 5th volume of our masterclass, we must dismantle one of the most persistent myths in education: the idea that testing is merely a way to measure what you have already learned. According to the rigorous evidence in Make It Stick, testing is not a measurement of learning. Testing is the learning. To achieve total recall, you must understand the profound mechanical difference between storage strength and retrieval strength. Storage strength is the capacity of your brain to hold on to a piece of information. Retrieval strength is the ease with which you can pull that information into your conscious mind when you need it. Most people focus entirely on storage, reading more books, watching more videos, and piling more data into their minds. But without retrieval strength, that data is like a book buried in a library with no catalog system. It exists, but it is inaccessible. This is where the retrieval gap becomes your greatest weapon. Every time you force your brain to answer a difficult question, or recall a complex fact without looking at your notes, you are performing a neural stress test. This act of retrieval physically changes the architecture of your brain. It strengthens the synaptic connections and builds a wider, faster highway to that specific memory. The more effortful the retrieval is, the more the brain reinforces the path. This is why self-testing is infinitely more effective than reviewing. Furthermore, we must address the testing effect. When you take a practice test, you are not just checking your knowledge. You are priming your brain for future learning. Even if you get the answer wrong, the act of trying to retrieve the information creates a cognitive void, a state of heightened neural curiosity. When you finally see the correct answer, your brain grabs it with much higher intensity because it has already felt the pain of not knowing. The high IQ individual stops studying and starts practicing retrieval. They don't wait for an exam to see what they know. They create flashcards, they use active recall apps, and they constantly challenge their own memory. They understand that a memory is not a static object sitting in a box. It is a living pathway that must be traveled frequently to remain clear. To remember everything is to stop being a consumer of facts and to start being a producer of answers. You must embrace the discomfort of the blank page, knowing that every time you struggle to remember, you are ensuring that you will never forget. Volume 6. The Elaboration Strategy and the Neural Lattice of Meaning. In the 6th volume of our architecture, we must address the fundamental nature of how the brain stores data. Unlike a computer, which stores files in isolated sectors, the human brain is an association machine. It does not store information in a vacuum. In Moonwalking with Einstein, the authors emphasize a critical psychological truth. You cannot remember what you do not understand, and you cannot understand what you cannot connect to existing knowledge. To achieve infinite recall, you must master the elaboration strategy. Elaboration is the process of giving new information meaning by connecting it to something you already know. Think of your memory as a massive, glowing neural lattice. Every piece of information you currently possess is a hook. When you learn something new, you cannot just let it float in your mind. You must hook it onto a pre-existing memory. This is why experts in a field find it easier to learn new things than beginners. They simply have more hooks available. To implement this, you must adopt the Feynman technique. a form of elaboration where you explain a complex concept in your own words, as if you were teaching it to a child. By doing this, you are forcing your brain to perform semantic encoding. You are stripping away the jargon and finding the mental anchor that makes sense to you. As Lisa Genova explains in Remember, the brain's prefrontal cortex is heavily involved in this process. When you elaborate on a fact, by asking "Why does this matter?" or "How does this relate to what I learned yesterday?" you are creating multiple synaptic bridges to that fact. Furthermore, we must use visual and sensory elaboration. If you are learning a dry historical date, don't just repeat the numbers. Imagine the smell of the gunpowder in that era, the sound of the crowds, or the weight of the crown. By adding sensory layers, you are involving the auditory and visual cortices in the memory. You are turning a flat piece of data into a three-dimensional experience. The high IQ individual realizes that rote memorization is for machines. For humans, memory is about integration. The more connections you build, the more redundancy you create in your brain. If one neural pathway to a memory is blocked, your brain simply takes another path through the lattice. To remember everything is to stop collecting isolated facts, and to start building a unified web of wisdom. You don't just want to know, you want to relate. Volume 7. Interleaving. The Secret to Cognitive Flexibility and Multidimensional Recall. In the 7th volume of our masterclass, we must dismantle the most common study habit in the world, blocked practice. Most people believe that the best way to learn is to focus on one specific topic or one specific skill, for hours at a time until it is mastered. But according to the groundbreaking research in Make It Stick, blocked practice creates a dangerous illusion of mastery. Your brain isn't actually learning the information, it is simply relying on its short-term working memory. The moment you switch tasks, the brittle structure of that knowledge collapses. To achieve elite retention, you must implement the strategy of interleaving. This involves intentionally mixing different subjects, different types of problems, or different skills within a single study session. Instead of studying topic of 3 hours, you study topic of 30 minutes, then switch to topic B, and then to topic C, before returning to topic A. The neurobiology behind interleaving is intense. When you interleave, you are forcing your brain to stay in a state of constant reloading. Each time you switch subjects, your brain must re-identify the correct strategy and retrieve the relevant neural pathway from your long-term storage. This process prevents the brain from entering autopilot mode. As Benedict Carey explains in How We Learn, interleaving creates a retrieval gap that mimics the unpredictable nature of the real world. Furthermore, interleaving builds cognitive flexibility. In a real-life situation or a complex exam, the problems don't come at you in a neat, organized block. They are mixed. By training your brain to switch contexts rapidly, you are teaching it how to discriminate between different types of information. You are learning not just how to do something but when to apply a specific piece of knowledge. The high IQ individual understands that mass practice is for the amateur, while interleaved practice is for the professional. It feels slower, it feels more frustrating, and it feels like you are making more mistakes, but that is exactly why it works. The confusion caused by interleaving is the sound of your brain building a more robust, sophisticated, and flexible neural network. To remember everything is to stop practicing for the classroom, and to start practicing for the arena. You must train your mind to be agile so that it can find the right memory at the right time in any situation. Volume 8. The Biology of Forgetting, the Guardian of the Neural Workspace. In the 8th volume of our masterclass, we must confront the counterintuitive truth. To have an elite memory, you must first understand the necessity of forgetting. In her profound work, Remember, neuroscientist Lisa Genova clarifies that forgetting is not a biological error. It is a vital function of a healthy, high-performing brain. If you remembered every single license plate you saw on your way to work, every face in a crowded subway, and every trivial detail of every conversation, your brain would be so cluttered with noise that it would be impossible to perform signal processing. Forgetting is the neural garbage collection system of the mind. Your brain is a biological economist. It constantly performs a cost-benefit analysis on every piece of data you encounter. This process happens in the synapses, the tiny gaps where neurons communicate. If a piece of information is not retrieved or used, the brain performs synaptic pruning. It physically weakens and eventually dissolves the connection to save energy and space for more vital survival data. This is why "use it or lose it" is not just a cliché, it is a molecular reality. To ensure your brain doesn't prune your most valuable knowledge, you must master the retention interval. According to how we learn, the rate at which we forget follows a predictable curve. The high IQ individual understands that they must interfere with this curve. You must prove to your brain that the information is irreplaceable. You do this by creating forced retrieval events. Each time you recall a fact just as it is about to fade, you are sending a massive chemical signal to the brain saying, "This data is essential for survival. Do not delete." Furthermore, we must distinguish between natural forgetting and interference. Often we don't forget information. It simply gets overwritten by new, similar data. This is why studying two very similar subjects back-to-back can be catastrophic for your memory. The elite learner uses strategic buffering. They give their brain time to harden a memory before introducing new, competing information. To remember everything is to realize that your brain is a finite workspace. You must be the editor-in-chief of your own mind, ruthlessly pruning the trivial, while using the biological mechanics of survival to immortalize the vital. You don't want to remember everything. You want to remember what matters with absolute crystalline clarity. Volume 9. The Sleep Save Button, the Neurochemistry of Consolidation. In the 9th volume of our architecture, we must address the physical reality of your neurons as a biological construction project. Memory is not a psychological event that happens while you are reading. It is a molecular event that happens while you are sleeping. According to the profound insights in how we learn, sleep is the save button of the human brain. Without it, your efforts during the day are nothing more than words written in sand. During the night, your brain enters a state of intense activity known as consolidation. While your body is paralyzed, your hippocampus acts like a high-speed projector, replaying the neural firing patterns of the day at 10 to 20 times their original speed. This process transfers the fragile short-term traces of information into the massive permanent structure of the neocortex. As Lisa Genova explains in Remember, during deep sleep and REM sleep, your brain is physically welding new synapses together. Furthermore, we must discuss the glymphatic system. This is the brain's unique waste management system that only becomes fully active during sleep. As you rest, the space between your neurons increases, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flush out the metabolic waste, specifically the protein beta amyloid, that builds up during high-intensity thinking. If you sacrifice sleep to cram more information, you are forcing your brain to operate in a toxic environment. Your retrieval strength collapses, and your brain becomes a foggy landscape where information is buried under biological debris. The high IQ individual understands that sleep is not time off from productivity. It is the most productive period of the 24-hour cycle. They treat their sleep with the same discipline as their work. They realize that 6 hours of study followed by 8 hours of sleep is infinitely more effective than 12 hours of study followed by 4 hours of sleep. To achieve total recall, you must protect your biological save button. You must realize that your genius is not born in the struggle of the afternoon, but in the silence of the night. You don't just sleep to rest. You sleep to solidify your empire of knowledge. Volume 10. The Ultimate Memory Protocol, Building the Infinite Library. We have reached the final stage of our architecture. We have dissected the neurobiology of difficulty, the art of spatial anchoring, the science of sleep, and the power of strategic forgetting. Now the time for theory is over. It is time for the protocol. To join the cognitive elite, you must stop being a passive observer of information and start being a mental architect. Your final, non-negotiable protocol for infinite recall rests on 4 definitive pillars. First, the active recall initiation. Every time you consume information, whether it is a book, a lecture, or this video, you must apply the closed book rule. Stop every 20 minutes, close your source, and force yourself to write down or speak out the 3 most important points. Do not look at your notes. This initial retrieval struggle is what signals your hippocampus to start the encoding process. If you don't fight to remember it now, you will lose it forever later. Second, the spaced retrieval schedule. You must move away from linear learning to cyclical learning. Use the 1-1-7-30 rule. Review your new knowledge after 1 day, then after 1 week, then after 1 month. This timing is designed to hit the forgetting curve at its most vulnerable points, transforming a fragile trace into a solid neural structure. Use digital tools like Anki or simple flashcards to automate this process. Third, the multisensory memory palace. For the information that is truly vital, the core of your expertise, you must build a permanent home. Identify a physical space you know perfectly. Convert your abstract facts into high-emotion, bizarre, and multisensory images. Place them in your palace and walk through it once a day for the first week. By doing this, you are shifting the cognitive load from your limited semantic memory to your unlimited spatial hardware. Fourth, the biological hardening. You must respect the sleep learning window. Never study high-value information right before a night of poor sleep. Your brain needs the REM cycle to perform the neural welding required for consolidation. Protect your brain's chemistry by managing stress and ensuring that your consolidation phase is never interrupted. The divide in the modern world is no longer between those who have access to information and those who don't. The divide is between those who can retain and synthesize knowledge, and those who are drowning in a sea of forgotten data. You now possess the blueprint. You have the books. You have the science. The leaking bucket is fixed. The library is open. Go forth and build your mind. Transform your memories into your greatest asset. And remember, your intelligence is not measured by what you have read, but by what you have integrated. Stay fluent. Stay focused. Remember everything.